chest up. It's a rabbit inside my hat. Angel all dressed up, looking to bless up at the milk and the honey gates. I make money for money's sake. I've been writing 100 days.
All right,
To
we
the
got a
rich about the
comment
earth,
from
they call
Hawaii
it
on the
baby for
call.
none.
Nice.
I know my shoulder blades are shattered wings to carry me home. I said, baby, come on. You know this flesh is only temporary, brittle as bone. Why don't you empty out your love for me, then chisel the stone? These are 10 black commandments, a property loan. Cause every blade of grass of earth we don't
Right,
actually
you
own.
see
I
Quad
am
City.
the
All
I
right,
am.
all
Say
right.
Sam, am
I
I?
think
The
let's go
universe
ahead
believe
and get
infinity, we go on.
started. Welcome, comrades. My name is Mark. I use he, him pronouns. I'm coming from Los Angeles. I'm a member of the Groundwork Caucus and have been a part of the organizing over the years in DSA's Eco-Socialist Working Group, which then transitioned into the Green New Deal Campaign Commission. I've probably worked alongside a lot of y'all here, and great to see a lot of new folks on this call as well. But yeah, thanks for showing up. Like I mentioned a minute ago, convention is coming up. Eco-socialist politics is a really big topic and focal issue for our organization, especially at convention. And I'm glad folks are here to hear the perspective of comrades from the Groundwork Caucus when it comes to eco-socialist organizing, our strategy, and how members of this caucus have played an instrumental role in carrying forward a lot of this work and advancing it in the context of current struggles and things to come. So I'm going to be your MC for the call today and just kind of run you through for what we're going to be going through. I've kind of did a little bit of intro, but we're going to hear from comrades that are groundwork members, but are also active in the Green New Deal Campaign Commission about what's coming up at convention, what's at stake, what are the different resolutions that are coming out that would be good to get a better grips on and understand. We'll hear about some of the history about the Green New Deal and how it's developed over the years within DSA from some comrades that have been in the struggle on this topic for many, many years, and that are leaders in their own right in their chapters and across the organization. We're going to talk about what the Green New Deal Campaign Commission is doing right now to advance eco-socialist politics across the organization, building up chapters, helping up chapters from small chapters to large chapters to build DSA to be a fighting and winning organization. And then we're going to have some question and answers segment where I have a couple questions prepared for some of our groundwork members that are active in eco-socialist organizing. That kind of susses out a little bit about the DSA's orientation when it comes to strategic organizing for Green New Deal and eco-socialist horizon. And then we'll open up for a couple audience questions as well that we'll have time for. And then we're going to close it out with just some next steps, especially as we head into convention, that we would like to get you involved with and get you participating with. Like I said, convention is we're less than about like what, 20 some odd days out from convention, maybe a little bit more. And hoping to see a lot of y'all there, but it's really important now in this time that we're having this discussion about eco-socialism. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our comrade Claire to talk about what's at stake. You know, what's at stake this upcoming summer at National Convention and why it's important. So Claire, go ahead.
Hey y'all, thanks Mark. My name's Claire, I use she, her pronouns. I am from the Metro DC chapter and I've been on the Green New Deal Campaign Commission since 2023. And, you know, I think a lot of us know because we're living it every day, but just to really center our conversation in the fact that we are all living in the climate crisis right now. You know, we see it in the news and we experience it every day in these natural disasters, from the hurricanes all across the East Coast and the flooding it caused in Appalachia, to the wildfires in LA, to the floods just last week in Texas. We're seeing these 100-year, once-in-a-lifetime natural disasters over and over again, you know, and have to reckon with the fact that they're not natural anymore. They're caused by climate change and they are climate disasters. And it's not just these disasters. I think it's also the conditions that we live in every day. Here in DC this summer, we have already broken the record for the most flash flood warnings, including one today, one yesterday. It's basically happening every week this summer, and we're on track to hit the record for extreme heat days over 95 degrees. Things like flash floods, extreme heat, they make everyday life living harder for the working class. It's a lot harder to, you know, walk 15 minutes to get to your bus stop if you're lucky enough to have buses in your area, and get to work on time in the middle of a flash flood, or when it's 100 degrees and humid. And those are the conditions that are getting worse and worse because of the climate crisis. So that's what we're living in right now in 2025. And so organizing for a Green New Deal and fighting to address the climate crisis in our actual lives every day, it's not just about fighting for, generations to come or our futures in 30, 50, 100 years. It's about addressing the material conditions of the working class right now in 2025 today, the lives, the health, the well-being of ourselves and our neighbors right now. And so you're going to hear a lot more from lots of folks on the call tonight about what Green New Deal organizing looks like in DSA right now and how we got to where we are, and the theory of change that we have at the Green New Deal Campaign Commission through our Building for Power campaign. But this is not the only view in DSA. We, as groundwork members and those of us that are on the Green New Deal Campaign Commission, we believe really strongly in the power of the Green New Deal to address the climate crisis and present real scalable solutions that address the material needs of the working class right now, the cost of living crisis, and also build for the future. But there's DSA members that don't want to see that kind of work prioritized anymore. There's an amendment to the resolution that the Green New Deal Campaign Commission has put forward to continue our work that would basically walk us back 6 years into the past without a strategy for eco-socialist organizing and without a campaign to organize under, and would basically go back to the days where we're discussing what we should do. And I think that DSA can do a lot better than that, and we must do a lot better than that in 2025. The climate crisis isn't waiting for us to think about what's going on. We have to act right now and meet the needs that our communities are facing. It's really our responsibility here in the United States to address the real impacts of the climate crisis in our communities, across our country, and across the whole world. So we have to take the moment that we have right now and really build for the future that we want to see and build better lives for everyone around us right now. So that's what's coming up in front of us at our convention next month. And I'm really excited to get to convention and defend our Green New Deal work and make sure that it continues to be prioritized by this organization. And I look forward to fighting that fight with all of y'all. I'll pass it back to Mark.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Clara, so much. All right, so we're going to keep it moving here. Next, for folks that are not too familiar with the history around DSA's Green New Deal, eco-socialist organizing over the years, it's been around for a good minute, and we've developed some really amazing leaders through that process, and we've advanced the political struggle around eco-socialism and Green New Deal. And so I want to spotlight two of our comrades here that have been really instrumental towards that advancement and that growth. So I want to introduce folks, our comrade Shauna from San Diego and Ashik, who's our current co-chair of the organization. So take it.
All right. Hello, y'all. My name is Shauna McKenna. My pronouns are she, her. I am currently the one of the two co-chairs of DSA San Diego. But in a past life, I have been involved with our Ecosocialist, in fact, Climate Environmental Working Group, organizing all the way back in 2017 at both the national and local levels, and then served on the first Green New Deal Campaign Commission Steering Committee. So just to kind of take a look back at what it looked like back in 2017. Like I said, it was originally called the Climate and Environmental Justice Working Group. At that time, it was a very horizontal orientation. The structure of the working group included subgroups like Agitprop. For those of you who are new to DSA organizing, that's agitation propaganda, essentially comms, but a little bit more badass sounding. And a research committee. And those groups were decided by members who wanted to self-organize around creating general resources.
No, I'm just listening while I'm walk around and work.
Oh, we got somebody who I want to hear from everybody, but if you could mute while just for now, that would be awesome. So anyway, these were really kind of general self-serve resources for oriented around activists to take as they would use. Pretty inward facing and honestly uneven. While it led to some great results for members like me who were focused on starting climate organizing in chapters where there wasn't anything happening independent of trailing local NGOs. There were also a number of other folks who weren't really engaging with their chapters at all. And honestly, we're mostly interested in talking with other activists online. And we needed to really draw on that urgency of the moment. I will say that the research group is how I learned about the particulars for demanding public power, namely franchise agreements. A case study by Groundwork member Sophia Nova was my inspiration for my chapter's first public power campaign. That resulted in huge concessions by San Diego Gas and Electric. I would say initiated public power as a hegemonic demand in San Diego's climate left. Before that, it was more focused on regulation to curb the worst of the utility. So it was an important stage for developing people into seeing how urgency leads to action. Now in 2018, 2019, after AOC introduced the Green New Deal resolution right out of the gate after she was elected, we saw how easily it could be co-opted by green capitalists and accommodationist NGOs. So we chose to fight for it as both an eco-socialist framing and a better defined demand than climate justice as a morally superior principle. Okay, so focusing on the demand for a Green New Deal and then its constituent demands, we began to think more in terms of setting goals and developing strategy than resourcing one-off actions or open-ended political education. But I want to name political education and days of action are integrated into bigger strategies. The change came in looking at it as a whole for the national organization. And so with that change, I'm going to hand it off to Ashik.
All right, thanks, comrades. Can you see me? All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashik, he, him. So I'm speaking to you today in my capacity as a member of Groundwork who was there since pretty close to the beginning of the eco-socialist work in DSA that Shauna describes. Like when we were asked to, talk about a lot of the perspective that led to climate action becoming a priority in DSA, like I really had to think back, like in the past 4 years, I've been in national leadership and DSA's elected leadership body. And, my role has shifted. I've gotten away from a lot of our eco-socialist campaign organizing. But it was really formative for me and a lot of people. Like Sean is now co-chair of San Diego DSA. A lot of the comrades who helped form this work across our organization and really synthesized the perspective that led to our campaigns are now leading all over our organization, like in their chapters, in their unions, like just really carrying forward our theory of change in so many ways. And just like when I was asked to do this, I really had to think about like, what was that trajectory? What led us to becoming such core people across DSA or especially in organized labor? And so next slide. So there was a lot that Shauna described, like those. So I joined DSA in 2017 in January when I was part of the Metro DC chapter. And I was really focused for the first 2 years in local organizing in my chapter in DC and the eco-socialist tendency that started to develop, like a lot of us in DC who were motivated by things like the Standing Rock protests in 2016 against the Keystone Pipeline, like a lot of climate action that came from like fossil fuel resistance. A lot of the work we were doing in DC, we started to reach out to folks in other DSA chapters to really, figure out like what are we doing in DSA? Like a lot of us had experience in different environmental justice organizations or like climate, mostly nonprofit-led activism, but also a lot of like fossil fuel resistance was really core. But as we came together, we just started to realize like one, a lot of those fights were stalling out. Like the Keystone Pipeline itself. I'm kind of like saying a lot of stuff in parallel to what Shauna said before I get into the next 2 years of eco-socialist organizing in DSA. But it really, like, I just really want to emphasize, like, those were very exciting years for the climate movement, like from 2014 to 2018 to 19, like until 2020, I'll say, was like a period of so much excitement in climate organizing. There was all this potential that opened up through the fossil fuel resistance and climate movement. Like there were massive climate marches that had millions of people on the streets across the country. And then when the Green New Deal kind of blew up as a national framework and AOC and Sunrise Movement, like other organizations kind of helped make it more popular, we really realized like in DSA, we needed to figure out like with a lot of the perspective that we had about why those mostly nonprofit-led organizations were kind of stalling out, and a lot of the on-the-ground resistance was also hitting a lot of walls. We really realized that like it wasn't enough just to resist the bad things that are really bad causing the climate crisis. We need to build the alternative. And as socialists, like we understand how bad the climate crisis is. We also understand that capitalism is causing it. And we understand that, eco-socialism is something that we have to build in practice. Like it's not enough just to, like the urgency of the climate crisis means we need to have all hands on deck to really build the alternative, not just, to moralize about it, which is where a lot of people came to climate organizing in those years, was like with a deep moral commitment, but not always grounded in, materialism. So as we started bringing together these perspectives across DSA, like a lot of DSA chapters had really exciting campaigns that they were testing out. As Shauna said, public power was really something that took off. Like I'm pretty sure there was over a dozen chapters across DSA that were trying public power campaigns. But over the course of those years, like 2018 to 2020, a lot of those campaigns started to hit walls. And a lot of the walls that they hit across the board were, one, not having enough support in the legislature, like either in your city or in state government, and two, not having support from the labor movement. A lot of labor unions, a lot of trade unions, especially that are utility workers who could be in a position to benefit from public power, were actually against it because, like, for all sorts of reasons, they didn't believe it was possible. They didn't think it was practical. Like the union bosses often, and these kind of conservative unions were against it. So we realized we needed to focus on a labor strategy to bridge together a division that had developed for many decades. Like capitalists in the energy sectors very effectively drove wedges between the climate movement and environmental organizing in general and labor organizing. And that's and a lot of activists really kind of fed into that by just resisting projects that we think are bad, but not laying out a clear alternative. Like that was one of the biggest blockers of the Keystone XL pipeline. I remember that was really formative for me in becoming a socialist. Like, oh, if all the workers in the sector are actually for the pipeline, this is not going to work for us. So that really led us to making labor a priority of eco-socialist organizing in DSA. And as we organized to make, an eco-socialist campaign priority for all of DSA, like since the 2019 convention, we built really strong consensus across the org. I think we spent like 6 months just working on a draft statement of principles, which I'm still really proud of, but that was a lot of time just figuring out, a statement. And then after that, when it passed a convention, we were like, oh, okay, now we have to figure out what is the campaign? How do we organize? So we spent a lot of time over the next year, like 2020. This was a pandemic year also. So like Shauna pointed out, we tested out a lot of things as part of a crisis response during those pretty crazy years. But we started to think more long term. We really focused on labor needing to be a core part of our strategy. So we got together a summit, an organizing summit that I can say more about in the Q&A. I want to leave time for that. But we got chapter leaders together from all over the country who are doing eco-socialist, like local, whatever, all sorts of things, who are interested in eco-socialism. We wanted to have as many chapters represented as possible to really figure out, like, what is a DSA national campaign going to look like? That's a climate priority. Like it has to be cohesive somehow. Like we have these public power campaigns, we have a bunch of transit campaigns, we have, local like climate justice fights, but what is going to be kind of a top thing? So through that summit, we got together like many leaders from across the country to just talk through things. And we came out of it with something that was a pretty coherent kind of 5-year strategy, which is kind of crazy to talk about now. It's 2025, 5 years later. But we decided that the first thing had to be like something around labor, like something around like a public funding, especially. So when Biden became president a year later, we just figured like, okay, there's probably a big opening for something around climate, something around labor, but we're actually not going to do what a lot of these climate nonprofits are doing, which is talking about funding in what became the Build Back Better bill. we really wanted to make sure that a labor thing would be our first thing. So that led to the ProAct campaign we can skip, it was on the last slide, but we can keep going. But yeah, the ProAct campaign was something that it was already a nominal priority of major labor unions like the AFL-CIO that they wanted Biden's government to pass, but they weren't really doing anything for it. So we, like in DSA, along with a bunch of other labor unions that were more progressive, that had leadership and members who were DSA members, like IUPAT, the Painters Union, CWA, communication workers, we made that a central priority of DSA for those months. So, you know, we had, I think, a pretty sophisticated campaign that was really driven by DSA and a couple of these unions. And it was such a, you know, a strong mobilizing campaign that it forced the AFL-CIO and other major unions to start to put resources into it. It didn't end up passing. And then, you know, the rest is history with what the Biden administration did or didn't do. The Build Back Better thing was a big mess. But the ProAct campaign like helped, you know, bring together labor and climate within DSA and like really started to get wheels turning across both of those movements. Like a lot of unions started taking climate more seriously because they saw us throwing down. And a lot of climate organizations were like, oh shit, maybe this labor stuff is real. It's not just another issue, you know, to lump in with 10 other issues that we talk about. It's not just like an intersectional thing. It is actually core to us being able to win anything. So so yeah, we can keep going. So this slide, so in that year in 2021 convention, we really found that through the campaign organizing that we did especially after that organizing summit, we found that what chapter leaders really wanted that had eco-socialist formations and especially growing labor formations. And as they started to win some electoral power, getting people elected, people wanted support for campaigns. Like they wanted, you know, not just to show up in a space and talk about, you know, degrowth or nuclear energy in abstract ways, which is what a lot of the working group structure had been in the past. There was a lot of good stuff in it, but we found that the campaign focus was really just where the energy was. It's really what came people. It got people coming to the national organization asking for, you know, like help, like figuring out how to campaign. So just quickly, I'll go through the next few. So after we formally created the Green New Deal Campaign Commission as the main organizing body, next slide. There are a few things that we tried in the months after. It was just, again, we sort of tried to take advantage of the remaining, you know, 1 or 2 year window of opportunity of the Biden administration. So we had a campaign around federal funding for green public schools, where we really prioritized working with teachers unions and building trades unions to get federal funding through what became the Build Back Better bill to support public school funding, like with the intention of organizing DSA along with unions locally, like teachers unions, building trades, and also activating parents, like public school. Families who are invested in public schools is a major source of public sector goods that still, you know, lots of working class people have access to, even as they've been slashed for many decades. So our theory of change really just started to build out as like, we have to center labor, we have to organize people around public sector goods. And, you know, we tried it, it didn't, you know, pan out. And then just, that was kind of the end of our federal focus. We were just like, all right, we tried it. It's just a sinkhole of energy, like a lot of the other climate organizations and unions that kept up the fight, you know, just, it really stalled out. And we realized we had to focus more on local organizing. So that's where we also, in 2022, helped run a slate of DSA nationally elected candidates who ran as a Green New Deal slate, prioritizing climate things in their agenda that are aligned with our vision of a Green New Deal. A bunch of them got elected, a bunch didn't, but we learned a lot through it. I will really shout out an important person on the slide in the lower left. Sarah Hannah Shrestha has been one of like kind of the strongest models for a DSA socialist in office in Mid-Hudson Valley in upstate New York. So she's the only statewide elected in New York State outside of New York City DSA. You've all heard by now about Zoran, who's so exciting and comes out of this block of New York socialists in office. Sarah Hunter is somebody who was an eco-socialist organizer who actually, little known fact, she was on the Eco-Socialist Working Group Steering Committee with me and Mark, who's on this call. So she, you know, fully developed out of DSA. She helped start an eco-socialist campaign in the Mid-Hudson Valley for public power. And that's what led to her and New York DSA organizers to its primary, that person who was standing in the way of public power. And then that led to a win for the Build Public Renewables Act, way quicker than anybody thought because of this groundwork that had been laid for years. So next slide. Okay, so all that to say, we did a lot of trial and error, tried a lot of things. Even the things that didn't succeed at winning the goals that we had set out to win, still led to a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of experimentation that really honed what we were trying to do. So yeah, the things that by 2023 convention kind of crystallized as the campaigns that we wanted to focus on, it was around public power, green social housing, public transit, and green public spaces, and campaigns that would, again, like center like organizing with labor unions to build things and for public sector goods. So I'll hand it over to Nicole, and then we can talk more about the theory of change that we've kept building through all this.
All right, so we can go to the next slides. So essentially, actually, before we get to that slide, go back. So what we're going to be doing is for convention is basically just reauthorizing what we've been doing. We've made a few changes to the program, which is just a couple of administrative things like the size of the body. And then also we want to add in mandate like a summit to have for folks who are not necessarily actively involved in a campaign or want to learn more, or like just kind of like have some of that structure to allow for members to discuss ecosocialist organizing, climate organizing as a whole group in a managed way. So we have our body has been developing chapters of all sizes for the last few years. We work with small chapters and large chapters. We can go to the next slide now. And we have had over 30 chapters have reached out to us directly to discuss ecosocialist organizing, formulating a campaign. Most people who reach out to us, or most chapters, like they're still pretty nascent and growing. A lot of small chapters do. So we have 10 active campaigns in transit, housing, schools, and energy across the country. That number goes up and down as campaigns like wind up, wind down. But it's usually around 10. And these campaigns have, they meet our sort of criteria for ecosocial organizing. We're able to give them grants. We have them give updates. We share them on socials. We ensure that they are getting boosted throughout the organization, sending out emails and so on. And so that is what our body does. We are tasked with making sure that these chapters have a sort of a unified vision for their campaign and are staying on track. So yep, that's what's going on right now. We can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, those are linked. My bad. So here's some of the campaigns that we're working with, just a sampling. So we have the Get on the Bus campaign in Louisville, who are doing really great stuff with the local bus operating union there, the ATU. You can go on our website to find out more about them. We have We Power DC, How's the Future in New York, which is housing. Milwaukee's Power to the People, which you may have heard about Alex Brower getting elected to the council there. Mass Transit for All in LA, the Green Deal for Public Schools in Louisville. And so these just like like half of the campaigns that we're working with right now. And we hope to keep these campaigns going, or hopefully they will keep going even if we do end up getting dissolved. But we are involved in making sure that they stay on track, that they get resources, that they are unified in their goal and vision, and so on. Yes, Alec was a great leader. Okay, next slide. Is a great leader. So we as a body have logged over 300, that's what we've logged. I'm sure it's more than that, but just in the past year, touches with membership and individual and small groups or individual members. So we do a pretty good job, I think, of tracking, what we have been doing as a body, as a working group. So we have had minimum 300 touches, emails, phone calls, video calls, whatever it is, with chapter leaders, which is a ton. We've also hosted 15 hours of trainings for comms, power mapping, strategy, tactics, and more, with 200 unique participants across 70 chapters. This is all in our resolution as to this is what we say we're going to do. We're going to host trainings. We're going to be having one-on-ones with members and campaigns. We're going to make sure that they have the tools, the start of the training, some of the resources they need to make sure that their campaigns are successful. And a lot of this material is developed off of leaders, campaigns, people even outside of DSA who have done this work and know what works. Next slide. here's an example of just a screenshot from one of our many hours of trainings. We had this is one of the, I'm not sure which season this was, but we do a 3-part strategic campaign. We've done it 2 or 3 times at least. So this is a screenshot from one of them. How many people are on our commission currently? We have our body is, I think it's 15, and we are moving it to 11. Next slide. So another thing that we do that is mandated in our resolution is to host mass calls and to go to regional organizing retreats. So we have been doing that. So I think we might be the only national body that specifically goes out of its way to have calls with other, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, people in other bodies, but we've had at least 8 with other bodies. So that's the Housing Justice Commission, the National Labor Commission, the International Commission, other union organizers, thought leaders, other climate organizers. These are all available on our website at dsagnd.org/mass calls. I think most of our recordings are there. There might be 1 or 2 that are not recorded, but they're all there. And so again, we are getting people together to have like cross committee, cross issue discussions for all membership and even non-membership. I've also gone to, go back real quick, to 4 regional organizing retreats. These have not really happened. We haven't gone to any this past year just because there haven't been many going on, but the years before we've gone to 4 to talk about our, what's going on and how people can get involved in Green New Deal, what our commission is about. And so us members have traveled to various regional organizing retreats to talk to chapters in a group setting. Next slide. So here's just some screenshots of the graphics for some of our calls. Again, you can go to our website, dsagnd.org, and look and see at the recordings there. We love doing these and we hope to continue doing them. Next slide. We've also distributed $7,000 in chapter grants, and we've raised $4,000 for DSA. So we're almost budget neutral. So this money has gone to our, the 10 campaigns to print stickers. For example, Louisville printed some stickers and flyers to kick off its campaign via to sticker bus stops for like a survey and more information to get more funding for their bus service. This really kicked off their campaign, and so they didn't have any really funds to start, and so now they are doing doing great. This has gone to Milwaukee's Public Power to help pay for meeting rooms, for a town hall, a bunch of other things. So this is another important part of our work, is we evaluate is this money going to be used to help your campaign? Is it just like kind of BS? But we make sure that things are going into the right place. And so that is part of our body right now. And we've also held 5 2-hour campaign specific trainings. So that's 10 hours of very individualized campaign trainings for certain chapters. I think Twin Ports was one, for example, LA. So we're really we are getting deeply involved with chapters on an individual basis. There's a couple more things I want to say. We have a couple more minutes, but basically, if you're a delegate, vote yes to reauthorize our commission so we can continue this work. We've seen really great results. Again, we've worked with big chapters Los Angeles is a big one, New York City, smaller chapters, tons of those. And so there's a benefit to our commission for all sorts of chapters. And so you can go to our website, dsagnd.org/GND 2025 resolution. It's also linked in our top menu, and read it. Also to vote no on the amendment, because the amendment would essentially dissolve it says that our body would no longer exist. And so we would not be able to come together. We meet every single Monday for an hour and a half and go over what's going on with chapters and what to do next and how to get these chapters moving forward. So we want to keep that up. Just last thing I'll say is as we mentioned, some of the criticism has been, some of the chapters, the campaigns haven't won much, or they get stuck. And that is true. I mean, that is just the nature, I think, of socialist organizing. It's very hard to win. But as was talked about before, is that these campaigns really, really strengthen chapters. So many of our members have said that, the membership really goes up when they have an actual campaign to run and aren't just like a discussion group. Chapters of all sizes have said this. For example, Zoran, who we talked about, he came out of Ecosocialist organizing. He came out of stopping a gas plant in Astoria and working on the BPRA campaign, which is one of our campaigns. And so, really good things, other good things can happen even if the campaign or the win itself isn't quite winnable yet. So yeah, I'll end it there. And one last thing I'll say is that we do have chapters. This is about chapter work. So chapters are encouraged to think about what is going on the ground in their cities and states, right? This is not a national campaign where like the PRO Act was, where we're saying, okay, no matter where you live, you can call your senator, congressman, or whatever. We're saying what is actually going on. Do you have an SIO? Or do you have a relationship with labor unions? Or do you have a relationship with the school teachers union? Do you have, what's your membership base? What's actually going on in your area? And so that's why we have this sort of like, it's a little bit more diffuse, but we really let chapters play to their own strengths and grow where they need to grow. So that is it for me. And I will pass it on to Mark.
All right. Thank you all for the comrades that took us over a very thorough history of DSA's eco-socialist organizing, the development of that, the focusing and honing in on strategic areas for chapters to intervene locally, to build up this broader collective force that is a socialist-driven Green New Deal. And it's DSA that I think it's really important, is one of the leading edges on this, especially in a climate movement where we have a lot of NGOs, nonprofits that are, putting forward some fairly weak politics. And at the same time, we're combating green capital, right? Like capitalism is trying to also profit off of this. And this is why, as DSA and as eco-socialists, we put forward a very strong and coherent program that speaks to everyday working people, that brings movement organizations in, that brings in the pieces of our base that we want to build as a mass organization into DSA. And we could do that through eco-socialism. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do a bit of a Q&A here. I know some comrades on the call. I think Shay is on the call. Shay is going to be one of the folks that may be answering some questions. I know we have Kelsey on the call. They are currently potentially out of Teamsters picket line. So Kelsey, if you have a second all right, there you go, Kelsey. Yeah, for comrades, no, Kelsey's Atlanta DSA running for Atlanta City Council and out on a picket line. That's the GND eco-socialist way, right? And then Ashika's down to answer some questions as well. But I'm going to go ahead and do our first one. And also, I invite folks that are in the attendees to this call, feel free to drop in a question or two into the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. We're ending the call at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so we'll try to time limit, but we'll try to get as many questions in as possible. So I'm going to drop the first one in. I'm going to read it and I'll drop it in the chat. So we talked a lot about campaigns. So why are campaigns an important vehicle for advancing eco-socialist demands and politics? How do they help DSA advance our movement? And I'll drop this in the chat, and starting off pretty broad and go from there. Does anyone want to go ahead and take a first go at this? Yeah, Kelsey, do you want to kick us off? Go ahead.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey. I use they, them pronouns. I am Atlanta DSA's endorsed candidate for Atlanta City Council, former co-chair, former National Labor Commission member. Hello, I see myself now. Yeah, so, my race in Atlanta is really focusing on affordable housing and public transit, from I would say a particularly eco-socialist angle, because, we care about the environment, but also housing and transit make up the two biggest costs for any working person. It's the biggest chunk out of your paycheck. And in the state of Georgia, a lot of laws that, are preempted at the state level. We can't impose rent control. We can't raise the city minimum wage. And so we have to be creative about how we actually make these things affordable for working people. What are the workarounds? And so there has been a big campaign. I wouldn't call it a big campaign, but a campaign in Atlanta over the last several years to build light rail. This is a plan that's been in the works for about 10 years. It used to have very unanimous approval, but recently the mayor pulled the plug on it because corporate forces, big business, don't want rail interrupting the tourist industry in this. If anyone's ever been to Atlanta, we have this kind of walking path called the Beltline, and the rail would be built around that. And, my district is very young. It's very progressive. It's left wing. A lot of people there signed the Stop Cop City referendum petition, for example. Not everyone is a socialist. Obviously, we know that when we're out knocking doors. But there are a lot of people that would like Atlanta to become more walkable, that would like to, ease traffic, that are very concerned about climate change, that are concerned about, lots of service workers are increasingly having to commute via Uber to work, which is increasingly expensive. Georgia's one of the most expensive states to own a car. So there's all these intersecting issues that make people care about public transit and building light rail, especially when Atlanta is as hot as it is. And so, we are kind of leaning into this movement demand to build light rail along the Beltline, which is, not for everyone a socialist thing, right? But it is an easy in to get people to care about what we're doing and to bring people into our eco-socialist vision of Atlanta, which is really a Green New Deal. So leaning into that campaign, as well as the broader movement to stop Cop City, which is already built, but that was a very big environmental issue these last several years, have helped to help us build up a base of support for what we're doing and what our campaign is running on. So running on these issues and building this larger kind of movement around it can help bring people in to what you're doing and sell them on what could be an eco-socialist vision, even if people aren't quite ready to join DSA and be socialists yet. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that response. And I think it kind of hits on like how an electoral campaign can be a vehicle for advancing what are non-reformist reforms. So these are reforms that shift the balance of power, that bring in a base of people, and it gets people plugged in to the broader fights, the broader horizons, the eco-socialist horizons that we want to win, right? And I think Ashik was wanting to jump in on this one next. If you want to go for it, Ashik.
Yeah, so I just to start, well, like I want to say a little bit about my Zoom background. I forget what the name of this image is, but it's something that I found like years ago when I think we were trying to envision like what is eco-socialism? What are our goals in DSA? Like what are we actually organizing toward? And we found that it was really like just to motivate each other, it was really important to really envision it, like what would it look like to reshape our entire infrastructure, the entire, society we live in, which is like people are saying in the chat, like car culture is terrible. The suburbs are just built to be, totally extractive and like hyper consumerist in ways that are totally divorced from like the environment, like what it takes to build products, and also labor is just like exploited to like produce what we live in the global north, so like, and like around the world, like the whole world exists under capitalism now, so the infrastructure is terrible and it's alienating. How do we change that? So that means changing our energy system, our housing system, the way we get around. And in thinking about campaigns, like what are we actually doing to win any of those things, to like organize people into the act of like organizing to win those things, which might take years or even decades, which was a really hard realization. Like for me, like I was really motivated in the beginning by the urgency of the climate crisis and the idea that, we just have to change everything in the next decade, right? Like in 2014, I remember thinking like, oh yeah, we'll decarbonize the whole economy in the US by 2025. Like I was part of an organization that had that as a demand. And the closer we got to that timeline, like year after year, it was like, oh shit, like we're not doing this at all. And especially after Bernie lost, the race for presidency, it was just like, okay, like that was our shot to win federal power without having organized a base. And now we're just forced to be in it for the long haul. So like, what is going to be most strategic to organize people together? So thinking about what kinds of campaigns, and like the idea that we have to do campaigns, like not just like there was an idea, or there is, just a sense from a lot of people who come to the left or like activism, especially around environmentalism, the idea that you do prefigurative things, right? Like we have to build the community. We have to do like, for environmental stuff, we're going to do permaculture. We're going to do all this local stuff. That was really appealing to me. Like when I came into DSA, I thought like, okay, yeah, we should all do a homestead together somewhere, just get a plot of land that like eco-socialists are going to do together. And like community gardening, has always been really popular, I think, for a lot of people who want like a tangible sense of what we do together, like get our hands dirty, we'll grow food, and then we'll build community through that. And I was part of a community garden effort in the DC chapter, when I was in chapter leadership. And we spent a summer like really, organizing a bunch of people to participate on weekend community garden plots. It took a lot of resources, and I think it was ultimately like a really good and wholesome social activity. And a lot of chapters have found that have sustained community garden plots that it's, it's a great social space. It's a really wholesome activity to do together. But a lot of the ways that, at least in the DC chapter that we had talked about it in the beginning, the idea that we're gonna feed all the unhoused people in the district based on what we grow in this garden, or we'll get more people doing these garden plots all over our district, it just, it couldn't scale. Like after 4 months of putting in a lot of effort, we had some beans and some tomatoes, which we brought to a chapter meeting and people appreciated it, but it didn't scale. And that was also the year that we elected a city council member to DC Council, Janice Lewis George, who ran on a green social housing platform. A few years later, she stayed a solid member of the Metro DC chapter, and she's become a champion for green social housing and all sorts of other climate justice issues. So that just, it just really showed kind of the different ways of building power together. And it has to scale. Like for the effort that we put in together, like we have to figure out what is going to make the juice worth the squeeze, what's going to make the beans worth the. I could do all these metaphors that I'm not going to do, but like a quote that really stuck in my mind, when I heard it was by the Brazilian environmentalist and trade union leader Chico Mendes. He said environmentalism without class struggle is just gardening, which really resonated, when a lot of us heard it. It was like, well, yeah, a lot of us have been gardening, through DSA, and now we're learning how to do class struggle in all sorts of ways, like through labor organizing, through electoral campaigns, through the types of campaigns we're talking about. Like class struggle is the point, and that's going to be what helps us win things.
Yeah, thanks, Ashik. Shay, did you want to get on this question? And they could probably move on to the next one after.
I don't have anything new to add, so.
Okay, cool.
That's
all right. Actually, I'll frame maybe up one of the questions in the chat related to degrowth. So I wouldn't necessarily say competing vision, but there was a question regarding degrowth and how can we organize comrades around a vision of growing quality of life, advancing green technology, improving environmental conditions for working people, and winning socialism. I know this has kind of been a topic that's been floating around DSA eco-socialist organizing for a while, but does anyone want to speak to a topic of degrowth and how it relates to some of the broader eco-socialist organizing? Yeah, she go for it.
Okay, I'll try to keep this answer very short. I think this has been this has been a really important discussion over the entire years that I've been involved in eco-socialist organizing. And I'll say that, I'll speak from my perspective. I think that in the past 3 or 4 years, that if for folks who want to prioritize degrowth and really, want us to focus on things that would be aligned with that vision, I think that one of the biggest interventions toward degrowth, or the biggest kind of class struggle demands that I've seen break through, is the demand for a 32-hour work week, especially when UAW, the United Auto Workers, took that on as a central demand in the year through and beyond their Big Three strike campaign at the end of 2023. They were demanding for their entire workforce of hundreds of thousands of workers across the country, one of the largest unions in the country, under the leadership of Sean Fain and the Reform Caucus, they centered that demand. And for folks who've been immersed in degrowth discourse, we know that shortening the work week is one of the most kind of tangible ways to reduce, to give people more time at home or leisure time, having less incentive to consume or to drive to work or whatever, and just that kind of positive framing, I think just helping people to imagine tangibly how could consuming less make your life better. I think just framing it as more leisure time is one of the biggest things that I've seen be taken up as a mass demand. And especially seeing UAW do it and make it more mainstream. Obviously it's not happening in this government, but when I saw Sean Fain and UAW throwing down for that demand, I was like, oh, this is real. This could actually happen if we keep organizing for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashik, for that. So I'm going to go on to our next question. The GNDCC has focused on transit, housing, green public spaces, and public power as strategic areas for campaigning. What about these types of campaigns resonate with you? And how do they advance DSA's broader political project of building a mass organization, a mass base that fights for justice across the globe, but also in our neighborhoods? And I'll drop the question in the chat. Nicole, did you want to take this one? I saw a DR right there.
I'll take this one.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we came up with these 4 areas just because like they are basically the main things that drive society and how we live: housing, transit, public spaces, and energy. They just make up such a bulk of our lives, and they also are where so many people work. Again, we want to focus on class struggle. Class struggle isn't just about us as consumers, but also producers, and how many people work in energy, how many people work in housing production, how many people work in transit. Like the MTA, it has like New York has like 70,000 employees or something crazy like that. It's a huge thing. How many people work in schools? There's just so much where of social reproduction happens, where needing to interface with work happens, and we really wanted to use these areas to defend the public sector, to strengthen the public sector, to take things out of like as best as we can, quote unquote, decommodify them, and that they're not necessarily reliant solely on market signals. This is just like where all of like a lot of society is, right? And so we chose these because there's just like been sort of the main demands for making and keeping public for sure by socialists for like who knows how long, since the time of Marx, right? So I think in terms of the question about how do they help our broader political project and advance us across the globe and our neighborhoods, I think kind of even going back to that degrowth question, like a lot of these things, they're very climate friendly, right? Like, for example, getting people on the bus and out of cars just helps the climate, right? Besides strengthening the public sector. New York City, just speaking from where I live, its dirtiest sector is actually housing, and that is because public transportation exists. Everywhere else in the country, it's automobile transportation. It's one of the worst climate killers there. And so the more people we can get out of cars and using public transit, the better it is for the whole climate, the better it is for resource use, the better it is for mining and so on. And so it has global implications for where we spend our time, where we spend our money, our leisure time, our work time, all of that stuff. So yeah, that's my answer. I don't know if somebody else has another response to that.
Yeah, Shay, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So I think that was really good summary of why these are important as GNDCC things. I think personally, having been politicized by the invasion of Iraq and a war for oil, I didn't I didn't have DSA as a teen to figure out where to go, but I was like, what doesn't use oil? It's transit, buses. And like eventually getting to learn as a socialist, organizing in transit spaces, the really key points of campaigning and the need for engaging with labor in our campaigns to win. And we stand at the cross sections of a lot of fights in housing, in transit, in schools that have been 100 and 150-year-old fights since Reconstruction and desegregation. And these are key points of where we need to be engaging, as well as sanitation workers, right? These are the key areas that we need to be engaging as a multiracial organization, and have been key areas for us to actually show that DSA gives a shit about working class people out in the streets. And by winning in Cleveland affordable bus fares and opening up our transit hubs in ways that people could celebrate and use.
And Shay, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey y'all, I'm Shay. I am from Cleveland. I am a barista at Starbucks. I'm a member of Starbucks Workers United on the NLC, served there with Kelsey, and have been fighting for public transit, was a staff for Amalgamated Transit Union, but now working with just kind of transit rider organizers around the country.
Awesome. And I'm just trying to do a quick time check for us. I want to try to get another audience question in, and so I'll read it and then I'll drop in the chat. How how much room is there for coming up with regionally or locally informed campaigns within the priorities or within the committee's priorities and theory of change? And I'll drop that in the chat right now as well for folks. Yeah, does anyone want to take up this question? Oh, Nicole, you looks like you already jumped on the DR. Go for it.
Yeah, so it's all based on what your chapter can come up with. Basically, none of this is national, federal. It is all about what's going on at your chapter level. And so we would work with you to say, like I mentioned earlier, like, do you have any SIO? How big is your chapter? Do you have a working group structure? Do you have a priority committee structure? You know, we had some chapters like, you know, if they want to talk about transit, I'm like, okay, like, what is your transit funding structure? What are the, like, housing, for example, in Atlanta? Maybe you can't do anything with rent control, or maybe you need to, like, you know, interrogate changing that law about rent control, right, before you can do rent control. And so it's all about what you can do in your chapter. So we worked with even Los Angeles, for example, who they had these really big ideas for, you know, doing fare free transit, but they were hitting a lot of roadblocks. And so we were like, okay, what can we do to use your strengths and to talk about things that are actually going on, like that are needed in the community and that people are actually asking for. And so some of that was bathrooms and public restrooms and more dedicated lanes for transit. And that were things that were part of streets master plans, that were things that unions were on board with. And so they shifted their demands from primarily of free transit to these things that were actually like being worked on and being advocated for by many other people, and that they had the sort of pathway to win. And so we also would help you sort of refine your demands to get them to work within your local conditions. So it really is all about like what is going on in your chapter, what's going on in your city. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all. I just want to appreciate everyone that has joined and that had to take some time to answer some of the questions that we had here today. Want to respect people's times. We're only planning for 1 hour, but I want to tee us up with what are some next steps that we could be taking here together. So as the slide comes up, want to let you all know that this upcoming Wednesday at, I believe it is, what time? 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, DSA's National Convention Committee is organizing a broader discussion regarding not only Housing Justice Commission and some other of the consensus resolutions, but this will be the evening that more broadly we talk about the Green New Deal consensus resolution. You'll see some of the comrades on this call at that meeting talking about the resolution. I would invite you all to join us at that call. The link is is displayed on the chat, but I think we'll make sure to follow up, and it's also in the chat, so you could sign up right now to attend that call. I really encourage folks to attend, really encourage folks to chime in and share your thoughts and perspectives on the consensus resolutions. And they'll also be discussing the amendment that Claire had talked about at the top of the call. So really get signed up for that. I know there's a talking point document that an informational document that is likely also shared there. This is going to purvey our perspective of why the Green New Deal campaign consensus resolution should pass unamended. And so really encourage folks to check out that document. If it resonates with you and you know some comrades that are going to convention, share that document with them. Maybe that helps inform people's perspectives going into convention. We know a lot of times when it comes to convention, people are hearing about things and learning about things the first time that they're actually on the floor and it's coming up. So let's get people informed ahead of time, and feel free to read and share out that document. And additionally, the Green New Deal Campaign Commission is meeting every week. We're scheduling calls with chapters to work through different campaign conditions in their local area, talking about strategy, thinking about what's that broad coalition we bring together to win a socialist Green New Deal, and how we build power, and how that power can reverberate from not just only our neighborhoods, but across the globe, because this is an internationalist struggle. The fight for a Green New Deal is an internationalist struggle, and fighting for that from within the belly of the beast of capitalism here in the United States is crucial to saving our planet. And so it's really important that DSA chapters are plugged into it, and that Green New Deal Campaign Commission organizers, like you've heard on the call today, are helping move that work forward. So get involved with the Green New Deal Campaign Commission, check out the socials, sharing a lot of the great chapter work that's happening across the organization. With that, this will wrap up our call for today. I appreciate you all for joining. Check out those links. Hope to see some of y'all at convention. Hope to see some of y'all at that call on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And we will continue to fight for a socialist Green New Deal. Solidarity forever, comrades. Appreciate every single one of you. Y'all have a good evening or good night.